My mother had a talent for making me disappear every Christmas without ever saying the words out loud. This year, I made sure I was actually gone. Or so I thought. I was sitting by the fire in my new living room when my phone buzzed. A forwarded email from a cousin glowed on the screen. It was a glossy digital flyer, luxury Appalachian holiday experience. The golden text read, right below my brother Tyler's smiling face were 3 high-resolution photos of the historic sanctuary I had spent 5 years secretly restoring. At the bottom, my mother had proudly listed my private address as the venue. No phone call, no warning. Just a public announcement that my home was now their business. I swallowed the thick knot of familiar disgust in my throat. I set my coffee down, opened my laptop, and bypassed the family group chat entirely. I went straight to the website of a bonded private security firm in Asheville. 3 minutes later, I had a patrol booked for the entire week. The war was officially on. As a high school dean of students, I deal with entitled bullies every single day. I know exactly how a bully operates. They push, they demand. And they rely on the victim staying silent to keep the peace. My family perfected this dynamic decades ago. Tyler is 32 years old and currently drowning in $80,000 of credit card debt. He racked up that debt, bouncing from one failed influencer venture to the next, always chasing the aesthetic of wealth without a single hour of actual labor. Every time his house of cards collapsed, my parents turned their eyes to me. I vividly recall sitting at a sticky diner table 3 years ago, exhausted from a double shift, while my father, Kevin, slammed his coffee mug down. He looked me dead in the eye and demanded I drain my savings to cover Tyler's car repossession. His reasoning was simple and cruel. He told me I owed it to the family because I did not have a real family of my own. They broke me back then. I handed over a check for $12,000 just to make the screaming stop. But today, I am the one holding the hammer. I did not buy my home with a magical endless bank account. I bought Blackthorn Manor when it was a $150,000 condemned shell. The roof was caving in. The floors were rotted. For 5 years, I spent every weekend and every holiday quietly securing state historical preservation grants, swinging a hammer, and meticulously restoring the property room by room. Today, the estate is formally appraised at $1.2 million. My family knew nothing about the grueling labor. They only saw the glossy finished photos online. And instantly, they decided it belonged to them. To a toxic family, your boundaries are not self-defense. Your boundaries are an act of war against their divine entitlement. They genuinely believe that anything you build, earn, or achieve is merely a resource waiting for them to harvest. The 23rd of December brought the first siege. 2 heavy black sport utility vehicles rolled up to my iron front gates. The tires crunched over the gravel, loud and aggressive. Tyler jumped out of the driver's seat and immediately began unboxing commercial event lighting on the shoulder of the road, acting like a hired contractor arriving for a scheduled shift. My father, Kevin, stepped out next, waving a thick stack of papers. A local county sheriff deputy pulled up right behind them, clearly called by my mother ahead of time to force the issue. My mother, Megan, leaned against the gate, wiping dry eyes, telling the deputy in a trembling voice that I was mentally unstable and hoarding family property. I walked down my driveway. I stayed entirely on my side of the iron bars. The cold wind bit at my face, but my hands were completely steady. I held my phone at my chest, recording every second of their performance. The deputy looked at me, clearly exhausted by what he assumed was a petty landlord and tenant dispute, and asked me to open the gate so they could discuss a shared occupancy agreement. I slid a single manila folder through the iron bars. Inside was my historical trust deed. I spoke clearly, making sure the camera picked up every word. I informed the deputy that the property was registered as a state heritage trust. Standard residential civil occupancy laws did not apply here. Any unauthorized entry was not a simple domestic dispute. It was an automatic state trespass against protected grounds. The deputy read the embossed seal on the deed. His posture shifted instantly. He handed the papers back, turned to my red-faced father, and ordered them to pack up their gear and leave the county lines immediately. Tyler kicked a metal light stand into the snow. They drove away, furious. I locked the heavy iron gate and walked back inside. But I knew the quiet was an illusion. The next morning, Christmas Eve, my phone exploded with notifications. My mother had launched a vicious viral smear campaign on the local Asheville community Facebook pages. She posted paragraphs of fake agony, painting herself as a terrified, loving mother going to check on her poor, isolated, lunatic daughter tonight. She was establishing a public alibi. She wanted the town to believe that whatever happened tonight was a rescue mission. I knew their exact playbook. They thrive on the noise of their own incompetence, believing sheer volume will intimidate their targets into submission. Tyler would never attack in broad daylight. He waited. At exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, the sun completely dipped behind the Appalachian ridgeline. Instantly, the lights in my living room died. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The router went dark. Tyler had gone to the Main Street box and physically severed the exterior fiber optic cables. He thought he had plunged me into darkness. He thought he had blinded my security cameras and cut off my ability to call for help. He thought he was hunting a terrified, isolated woman. He was completely wrong. I was operating on a cellular hotspot, and I was not alone. Sitting on the leather sofa across from me, sipping black coffee, was Mr. Caldwell, the regional director of the State Historical Society. Next to him sat my property attorney. I had invited them over for a perfectly legitimate, scheduled preservation assessment. Standing in the darkened hallway, completely out of sight from the front windows, was the armed, bonded private security officer I had hired the day before. The trap was flawlessly set. Footsteps crunched on the frozen snow covering my front porch. Heavy, deliberate steps. Through the thick mahogany door, I could hear my mother whispering sickly sweet, fabricated apologies. She kept repeating my name, begging me to let them help me. The words were soft, but the metallic scraping against the lock was not. Tyler wedged a heavy iron crowbar into the seam of the original, 1880s hand-carved wood. The noise echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. The heavy wood groaned, splintered, and then violently cracked open. Tyler burst into the foyer, his chest heaving. The iron bar gripped tightly in his right fist. A triumphant smirk stretched across his face. I hit the switch for the emergency backup floodlights. The foyer ignited in blinding white light. The smirk vanished from Tyler's face so fast it looked physically painful. The room was dead silent, save for the rapid clicking of my attorney's phone camera capturing every angle of the broken door and the weapon in his hand. Mr. Caldwell stood up slowly, staring at the ruined, century-old mahogany with absolute horror. The security officer stepped out from the hallway shadows, his hand resting calmly on his duty belt, and pressed the direct silent dispatch button on his radio. Tyler's fingers went numb. The heavy iron crowbar slipped from his grip and clattered loudly against the marble floor. Behind him, My mother's fake tears instantly evaporated into sheer, suffocating terror. My father, Kevin, took one slow step backward, instinctively trying to put distance between himself and his son's felony. Sirens wailed in the distance, echoing off the mountain and growing louder by the second. 3 county cruisers whipped into the driveway, their blue and red lights painting the snow in frantic strokes. 2 on-duty officers rushed the porch. Kevin frantically stepped forward, waving his hands, aggressively trying to gaslight the cops into treating this as a simple family misunderstanding. My attorney stepped directly into his path. She handed a stunned Kevin her business card. She informed him that her client would only communicate through the state court system from this moment forward, and ordered him to step off the property. Mr. Caldwell did not yell. He simply raised his camera, took a final flash photograph of the splintered wood, and looked at my mother with pure disgust. He stated clearly that the federal damage assessment for the heritage property would be filed with the prosecutor by morning. My mother screamed that I had set them up. I did not argue. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the printed screenshot of her viral Facebook post from that morning, and handed it directly to the arresting officer. I provided the undeniable written proof of their premeditated conspiracy to travel to the property under false pretenses. The officer slapped handcuffs onto Tyler's wrists. The metallic clicks echoed beautifully in the crisp mountain air. Tyler was arrested for felony destruction of heritage property, conspiracy, and breaking and entering. He was shoved into the back of a cruiser. My father was detained for questioning. My mother stood shivering in the snow, entirely socially exiled, watching her perfect narrative burn to ash. A year has passed since that night. The judge sentenced Tyler to 4 years in state prison with a mandate to pay $142,000 in restitution for the historic damage. The fines forced my parents to liquidate their retirement accounts to keep their own house. I never spoke to them again. When you survive a family like mine, the victory does not happen in a courtroom. The victory happens in the quiet moments afterward. It happens when you wake up on a Sunday morning, and the only sound in your house is the wind in the trees. It happens when you finally realize that the crushing weight you carried your entire life did not belong to you. I want to break this down because I know someone listening to this right now is staring at their phone, dreading the next text message from a parent or a sibling who drains their soul. Rule number 1, boundaries feel like violence to the entitled. When you spend your entire life being a doormat, the first time you stand up, the people stepping on you will genuinely claim you are attacking them. Let them feel attacked. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your peace is strictly non-negotiable. If they call you selfish for protecting your home, your money, or your sanity, you accept that title and you wear it like armor. Rule number 2, silence is the ultimate weapon against gaslighting. Toxic people thrive on your emotional reactions. They want you to scream, cry, and defend yourself. Because as long as you are reacting, they are controlling the narrative. When you stop arguing and start documenting, their entire foundation crumbles. You do not out-argue a manipulator. You outsmart them. You collect the receipts. You step out of the way. And you let their own arrogance destroy them. Rule number 3, you cannot heal in the same environment that broke you. Society pushes a dangerous lie that blood automatically equals family, and that forgiveness requires reconciliation. That is a trap designed to keep victims serving their abusers. Blood is purely biological. Family is entirely behavioral. Family is the people who respect your closed doors, who celebrate your independence, and who never view your success as their personal ATM. Look closely at the people demanding endless sacrifices from you right now. Are they actually loving you? Or are they just using you as a human shield to protect themselves from the consequences of their own choices? If you are holding the front door open for the very people who keep breaking your windows, this is your sign to let the locks click shut. If you have ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to protect your own peace, share this story. You are not alone, and your sanctuary is worth fighting for. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she give them $12,000 3 years ago? Why did she let them treat her like a backup bank account for so long before finally buying that house and locking the gate? It is incredibly frustrating to watch from the outside. But as a behavioral analyst and financial strategist, I need to tell you that she was not stupid. She was trapped in something called the slot machine effect. In psychology, we call this intermittent reinforcement. When a toxic family treats you terribly 90% of the time, but gives you just a tiny crumb of approval, a single compliment at dinner, one normal holiday, one moment where they call you a good daughter, it hooks your brain exactly like a casino slot machine. You keep putting your coins in, hoping for that jackpot of genuine love. You pay off the car, you cover the rent, you endure the insults. You are addicted to the hope that if you just give enough, they will finally see your value. But the house always wins. What makes this story brilliant is exactly how she broke the addiction and executed perfect financial self-defense. Let us analyze her smart moves, because these are the exact tactics you need to use if you are dealing with financial bullies. First, look at the audit strategy. When her family showed up with those forged occupancy papers, she did not panic. And she did not try to debate the emotional fairness of the situation. Scammers and entitled relatives hate details. They rely on you getting overwhelmed by guilt and giving in to make a scene stop. By silently sliding that historical trust deed through the gate, she shifted the battleground from family drama to hardcore estate property law. She audited their emotional scam with cold, hard legal facts. Second, we saw the buyout principle in action. She did not just buy a house, she invested in a fortress. She tied her major asset into a state historical trust. By doing that, she placed her wealth behind layers of bureaucratic armor that a lazy, entitled brother could never penetrate. She made herself an incredibly difficult target. She bought her freedom by making her boundaries legally binding. Finally, she mastered building the case. When the power went out, she did not confront them in the dark alone. She brought in a lawyer, a historical director, and bonded security. She essentially built an entire prosecution team in her living room before the crime even happened. She let them swing the crowbar, fully documenting their destruction, ensuring that when the hammer of justice fell, it was swung by the state, not by her. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Trust is earned, not owed. If you are dealing with relatives who view your bank account as their emergency fund, remember that your ultimate power is the word no. If this breakdown helped you see a toxic situation in a new light, subscribe for more strategies. And protect your peace at all costs. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did she hand over $12,000 for a car repossession 3 years ago? Why did she endure that abuse for so long before finally locking the gate? It is completely maddening to watch from the outside. But as someone who unpacks these family dynamics and financial traps for a living, I need to tell you a hard truth. Sarah was not weak, and she was not stupid. She was caught in a psychological trap. In psychology, we call this the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. When a toxic family treats you terribly 99% of the time, but occasionally throws you a tiny crumb of approval, one quiet dinner. One backhanded compliment, it hooks your brain exactly like a casino slot machine. You keep putting your emotional coins into the machine, enduring the abuse, praying for that jackpot of genuine love. You become addicted to the hope of having a real family. But just like the casino, the house always wins. What makes Sarah's story a masterclass is how she finally broke that addiction and executed perfect financial self-defense. Let us break down her specific smart moves, because these are the exact street smart tactics you need to survive. First, look at the audit strategy. When her father showed up at the front gate waving fake occupancy papers, she did not panic. And she did not argue about emotional fairness. Scammers and entitled relatives hate details. They rely on you getting overwhelmed and giving in by silently sliding her historical trust deed through the gate. She audited their emotional manipulation with cold, hard state property law. She proved they had zero leverage. Second, she used the buyout principle. Sarah did not just buy a house, she invested in her absolute freedom. By placing her estate into a state historical trust, she wrapped her major asset in layers of bureaucratic armor. She bought her peace of mind by making her boundaries legally untouchable. Finally, she mastered building the case. When the power went out on Christmas Eve, she did not run out to confront them in the dark. She built an entire prosecution team in her living room, a lawyer, a historical director, and bonded security before the crime even occurred. She let them swing the crowbar while the authorities were watching, ensuring the state took them down. And here's the part nobody talks about after the sirens fade. The house became quiet again. Not the suffocating quiet I grew up with, where silence meant someone was angry, someone was plotting, or someone was about to demand another sacrifice from me. This was different. This was clean, quiet, the kind that settles into the corners of a room after the danger has finally been removed, the kind that lets you hear the fire crackle, the wind brush against old glass, and your own breathing without fear hiding underneath it. For the first time since I bought Blackthorn Manor, I walked through the hallway and did not feel like I was defending it from ghosts. I touched the repaired mahogany door, the same door Tyler had split open with a crowbar. And I realized something that nearly brought me to my knees. He had not attacked a house. He had attacked the first place in my life where I had ever felt safe. That is why protecting it was never selfish. It was survival. My parents wanted the world to believe I had become cold. They told relatives I had changed, that money had poisoned me, that a house had turned me against my own blood. But the truth was much simpler. I had finally stopped funding people who confused access with love. I had finally stopped confusing guilt with responsibility. I had finally understood that a family who only shows up when they need your money, your labor, your home, or your silence is not a family. It is a business arrangement where you are the only one paying. Months later, the Restored Sanctuary hosted its first official Historical Society event. The lights Tyler tried to steal were replaced with warm brass fixtures. The broken door was repaired by a craftsman who treated every carved detail like sacred history. Guests walked through the rooms with soft voices, admiring the woodwork, the windows, the staircase, the life I had rebuilt with my own two hands. No one shouted, no one demanded, no one told me I owed them the space. I stood near the fireplace, watching strangers respect the home more gently than my own family ever had. That was the moment I stopped grieving what I never had. Because sometimes healing is not getting the apology. Sometimes healing is realizing you no longer need it. You stop waiting for the people who hurt you to become witnesses to your pain. You stop dragging your wounds back to the same people who caused them, hoping they will finally treat them carefully. You learn to close the gate, call the lawyer, save the screenshots, and let the law speak in a language they cannot twist. So if you are listening to this and wondering whether your boundary makes you cruel, let me tell you the truth. Cruel people do not worry this much about being cruel. Selfish people do not spend years being drained dry before finally saying no. Bad daughters, bad sons. Bad siblings do not lose sleep over protecting themselves from people who never protected them. You are not the villain because you stopped being useful. You are not heartless because you stopped answering. You are not destroying the family by refusing to keep funding the dysfunction. You are simply refusing to keep paying rent inside a prison someone else built. My family wanted a holiday experience inside my home. What they got was a final lesson. They learned that my peace was no longer available for public use. They learned that my door was not a suggestion. They learned that the daughter they trained to disappear had spent years quietly becoming impossible to erase. And now, every Christmas, I light the fire in Blackthorn Manor myself. I hang one wreath on the repaired front door. I make coffee in the kitchen. I sit by the window, and watch the snow settle over the locked iron gate. No screaming, no guilt. No one outside pretending love sounds like a demand. Just me, my sanctuary, and the beautiful sound of a life that finally belongs to me. If this story hit a place you have been trying to ignore, ask yourself one question tonight. Who in your life only calls it family when they need access to something you built? And more importantly, what would your life look like if you finally let the gate stay closed? You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Blood might make you relatives, but loyalty, respect, and safety make you family. Trust is earned, not automatically owed because of genetics. If you are dealing with relatives who view your life as their personal emergency fund, remember that your ultimate power is the word no. If this breakdown helped you see a toxic situation in a new light, hit subscribe for more strategies. And share your own story in the comments below. Protect your peace at all costs.